I'm also on the call tonight from Joe Biden country, which is to say Atlanta, Georgia. Um, so, along with Mike Janis and Heidi Hamilton and others, I was a debate assistant at Iowa while I was completing my doctoral studies, which gave me a terrific chance to work with David and Paul Slappy and Paul Bellis and many of you. Since graduating back in 1996, I've been at Georgia State University, and that's given me the chance to stay in close contact with David since leaving Iowa City. I must say it is a true privilege to have the chance to say thanks for the impact David Hinksman has had on my personal and my professional life. For one, maybe a simple thing, I wouldn't have finished my dissertation except for David's generosity because I literally wrote my dissertation on David's kitchen table. He let me stay there in the bridge summer between Iowa and my first faculty job. And of course, looking back on it, what I remember most was just the simple graciousness of it. David offered his place easily, generously. He didn't give me a hard time about it. And I actually finished my dissertation, which was a miracle. I didn't actually get to know David all that well until I arrived at Iowa. I debated as an undergrad at Wake Forest University, and for part of the time I was there, David was associated with the Kentucky program and crazy J.W. Patterson. So I was occasionally judged by David. I remember that my main coach at Wake Forest, Ross Smith, and I argued about whether to strike Hinksman. Now, of course, I wanted him. Actually, I mean that. I did. I always admired him as a judge. David's long been regarded as one of the nation's best debate judges. Actually, those of you who've had that experience know that David has what's actually a singular skill at being able to hone in on the key turning point in a debate. It was, as a debater, I found that to be educationally wonderful because I always came away with a very clear sense of exactly how he saw things and what was working and what wasn't working. So I was grateful for that. But here's the thing, Ross Smith liked David's judging too. David judged a lot of Wake Forest debaters over the years, but, and you'll love this, Ross put it to me this way, and of course I was a 19-year-old undergrad at the time. We need to strike him because, he said, David Hinksman is too smart to fall for your bullshit. That was what he said. That pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? Right there. That's Hinksman. My Iowa years flew by. It was such a blast to be there during those years. The doctoral program was intellectually alive. Being associated with the college debaters and the summer programs, it was just exhilarating. I, to this day, have such fond memories of hanging out with Coco and Smith and Sandler and Rayburn and Polakis and Epping and Jensen and, gosh, Sean Shearer, Tiffany Earle, Keeter, Ernie Wagner, Monty Johnson, and even Michael Antonucci, of all people. So look, I know time is short and I need to wrap up, but just a couple last things. One is to say that David's retirement makes me nostalgic, actually. It's simply hard for me to get my head around the idea of a world where there's an A. Craig Baird debate program or an Iowa Com Studies program without David Hinksman in the heart of it. So many of the mentors we had there were gone and too soon. Paul Slappy, of course, what an amazing, hilarious, complicated, passionate, inspirational character he was. Just one block from where I'm sitting, there's a coffee shop and the owner smokes those noxious clove cigarettes. And every single time I detect that smell, it instantly takes me back to Iowa City. Others who were so influential in the department's life of the mind have now passed on too soon as well. Bruce Gronbeck and Donovan Oakes and Michael McGee and Sam Becker most of all. But for me and for the other grad students who worked with debate, David has always had such a positive intellectual influence. For one, it always seemed to me like he'd read everything. His enormous library was always there to confirm it if you had any doubt. And in the vital but also rather polarized world of contest debating in 2020, everyone I know looks up to David as an intellectual force in the world of debate. And then one last thing I promise, I just want simply to take a moment to note that for 40 years, David Hinksman has worked at an astonishingly high level of energy and workaholism. Tens of thousands of students have taken his classes or heard him lecture. Thousands of debaters coached or judged or mentored, not to mention what only probably feels like the thousands of hours of faculty and committee meetings. But this is simply an extraordinary and a sustained contribution. It will be missed forever, and no one has better earned the pleasures of retirement. So I thank you for everything, truly.